Arsenal come streaming forward now in surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. But Thomas charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now. Thomas, right at
the end. Hello and welcome to Gooners in USA. Mike, another win.
We did it.
It's back on. The title race is on.
You know what, we have accomplished something now that we have, and by we I mean Arsenal, not you and me. We've never done before, ever in the history of the world.
What's that?
For the first time, we've overtaken Huddersfield Town in the Premier League table at the end of a match day. I mean, it has finally happened. Waiting for this moment.
We are on the path to becoming what they call a quote-unquote top club.
Quadruple.
The quadruple's on.
Yeah, we're on a roll, my friend. 462 minutes now without giving up a goal from inside 45 yards.
Wow.
And in this one, we had some GIT representation at this game, I believe. Your doctor, lawyer, physical therapist buddy Eric broke his Arsenal.
He broke his Arsenal duck. And I wish I could have been there with him because I know his trip over from Chicago was too long in the making, but good for him. I'm glad that he got to go to the Emirates. And how about meeting Petr Cech in the Armory of all places? So quick background: Eric's in the Armory. He turns around and Petr Cech's buying a kit. I think. Does dude not have peons to do this for him, or can he not go to the club like Vic Akers and be like, "Hey, I need a kit for my son"?
I examined that picture to see if it was like one of those cardboard standees that he was sitting next to, but no, dude was holding like his glasses, which you always want to see a goalie wearing glasses. So I was like, that was actually Petr Cech, so that was impressive. This dude is one handsome son of a bitch, Eric, by the way, and he'll be on the podcast in a few weeks because I'll be with him. But I might be running away with the picks titles for this season, but you definitely have the edge when it comes to handsome friends. I mean, you got Eric on your team, you got Justin, who's not too shabby, and then obviously Joey Murphy's just a complete piece of ass.
Yeah.
And I show up at the pub with my boys, and people go running and screaming out onto the streets. But speaking of pieces of ass, we have our third consecutive first-time guest joining us today. And how's that for an intro? But he's anything other than a first-time podcaster and on the blog circuit. He is the host and the star of Arsenal Vision podcast with his co-hosts Tim Stillman, Clive, and Paul, and various other guests over time. And he's written over 137,000 tweets from his Twitter handle, @YankyGunner, where he's always inviting you to block him. And he does a real good job of dispelling the myth that all Americans are nonces when it comes to football, otherwise known as soccer here. But welcome to the pod, Elliot, a.k.a. Yankee Gunner.
Well, a few things. If you keep objectifying your guests as pieces of ass, you're going to keep needing first-time guests because we're so much more than that. And a few things. I am most definitely a nonce. I think it is important that we stress that. I think the fact that you've highlighted the number of tweets I've written suggests that I need to be doing better things with my time than talking and tweeting Arsenal.
You know what gave me the idea, Elliot, is I during the game yesterday, I noticed you tweeted approximately 491 times. So I'm like, let me see, because he's been doing this for a while. Let me see how many tweets he's sent out. And
well, here's the cool thing. If you are buried in your Twitter timeline, I find that's the best way to have deep insights into the match, is to not actually see any of the match, but solely look at and respond to tweets throughout the 90 minutes.
So you have not actually watched an Arsenal match for 9 years, then, is what you're saying?
Well, I mean, what I would say is I have my finger on the pulse of what Twitter thinks of Arsenal, and isn't that really what the game is about?
So in your mind, then, Theo wins the Ballon d'Or every season.
I know what goal impact thinks of Theo Walcott. So, these are the kinds of things that when you're on Twitter, I don't know if he converts his chances or if he's playing well, but I know what the stats community thinks of him. So there's that.
Very, very highly of him. So your Arsenal story starts in a small town in the Northeast. Now, seriously, as a fellow American, where do your strong ties to soccer, football, whatever we want to call it, and specifically Arsenal trace back to? When did all that get started?
So in 1998, I started traveling to London for work. So I was there periodically. It coincided with a time at the club when this young up-and-coming manager joined, and the fortunes of the club turned in the right direction. A guy, it may predate you guys following him. It was this guy, Arsene Wenger, French guy, came from Japan, actually. No one had really heard of the guy, but there's a lot of buzz about the club, and obviously visiting London, Arsenal was the London club at the time. It was really just Arsenal and United through those next few years, and having the chance to be in London during some big games and FA Cup finals and things like that, I just started to really take an interest in them. Now, as you'll know, back at that time, it was very difficult to follow the games back here in the States.
Yep.
So I had what I would sort of call a passing interest, and I kept up with them to the extent that I could on the web and, reading up on them and playing as them on FIFA, which I think is actually a pretty strong connection for a lot of people in the States, as odd as that sounds, because that team was pretty spectacular to play with. And then obviously, as television coverage improved over here, and as I continued to travel over there, my loyalty for the club strengthened. And now, obviously, I've kind of given them up for Twitter. But it was a good run while it lasted.
Yeah, you made some pretty interesting and good connections over there in the world of media and the blogosphere and all of that, and have moved that into, among other things, a fantastic podcast that you do every week or
every match. Yeah. Yep, after every match we do the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast, and I certainly hope people will check it out. I would not say it is as enjoyable as this one, but it is definitely as long as this one. So
I suckered you in for that one. I was clearly going for the reverse compliment, the reflex compliment, and you fell right into it. That was wonderful.
There are other podcasts that come out with frequency about the Arsenal, but there are a few that come out with frequency about the Arsenal that I host and run about an hour and 10 minutes. So that's the strongest recommendation I can provide.
That's exactly right, and I would second that recommendation. So, and lastly, I've noticed of late that you and I share one very unseemly trait, probably more than one, but one in specific, an inability to let go of the whole Ox situation. Unless I'm misinterpreting, I hope I've been paying attention, but I'm not the only one, I guess, isolating Ox during Liverpool and England games and making compilation videos of his diabolical play and laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, if being a jerk off actually gave you money, I would be laughing all the way to the bank. But so
you can make some money doing that. By the way, they have sperm banks and they will pay you for that. Just as a reminder.
I've already maxed out my accounts and all of those.
It's the worst. They only let you go twice a week.
The porn's not strong enough for Mike at those locations.
That's the problem. They just
it's too mainstream.
A secret catalog. Can a guy get some porn up here?
He's got some weird fetishes.
How many fake taxi videos could I watch in 1 week? Really? But yeah, I mean, so there's a little Ox resentment or mockery going on with you. Is that do I have company in that?
Yeah, you got company. I mean, I think a big part of it is just that I never really found myself attached to the player when he was at Arsenal, and I felt that there was just sort of a lot of hope and patience and hype invested in him that I never really understood. I felt that he got the chance to start on the left wing in the 4-3-3 for many years, got a lot of starts that I don't think were warranted ahead of players that I think deserved chances more than he did. And I'm not a big fan of the word deserved, but I think deserved on the basis of their performance and his. I think he was an uneven contributor who had great physical traits and power and speed and dribbling, and that's eye-catching, but did not have a great #football brain, and didn't make the right decisions a lot and hurt the collective, kind of in the way that Alexis can hurt the collective at times, but without the end product and the positive contributions that Alexis provides. And so I was frustrated by him. He obviously didn't stay fit enough to get the kind of run in the side that he deserved. But then this summer was a real frustration. I felt that if we were going to hold on to Alexis and Ozil and lose them for free, or certainly risk losing them for free, that at a minimum we had to recoup a fee for him. And seeing him get shoehorned into the side at the beginning of the season at the expense of our performances, at the expense of Hector Bellerin getting shifted to the left, at the expense of Kolasinac getting starts, it just all really rubbed me the wrong way, combined with the fact that it felt that he had kind of played arson in the club for fools in terms of wanting to get playing time, and so leading them to believe that he would re-sign when he never would. The whole thing just didn't sit right with me. I don't think he was ever the player people made him out to be. And so while it is probably best to let it go, football is nothing if not fueled by Schadenfreude and bitterness. And
I love you, Elliot. That is so true. And my reasonings for not getting over it are different than yours, because I was highly into him as a player. He was probably my favorite character on the team. I just wanted him to succeed so much. I liked the kid. I excused a lot of his poor performance and inconsistent, I should say, performance. And just finally, when he decided to get a little too big for his britches this summer and make the move about the footballer Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I just swung completely over to the other side. I'm a little volatile, so I'm either on one side or on the other, and that's my resentment. But I've been told I need to just let it go, move on. His departure certainly has not caused any problems for Arsenal. In fact, they may have solved quite a few. But
fuck that, Mike. I say nuance is for other people. We can do the big polarizing emotions and leave the nuance for other people.
Exactly. I mean, I don't mind being insulted until I'm a git. So speaking of football, we had 2 matches this week, Andy.
We did. Doncaster in the Copacabana Cup.
Coca-Cola Cup.
Which we are through to the next round. We'll just quickly discuss it and do like a quick overview. It wasn't really the performance or the result we would think to get against a Doncaster side. I mean, 1-0. It should have been more comfortable. I thought our team selection saw some players out of position, specifically in the back, so I wasn't surprised we weren't great. But my biggest takeaway was I thought Wilshere looked comfortable, and it's great to see him get a full 90 minutes. Hopefully he's going to be fit and ready to play this Thursday. Theo, again, against Doncaster, I know he got the goal, but he looked absolutely wank. His first touch, his inability to run at defenders, keep possession, I just thought he was dreadful. And, I don't think the result was ever in threat, but, as a third round opponent, we should have gotten through a little bit more comfortable. And so don't know what your takeaway of the match was, but, we're through and that's what matters. And we're not, outside of Alexis, I don't think we're using any big players to get through these rounds. And so it's just great opportunity for the likes of Reece Nelson, Jeff, Maitland-Niles, whoever the fuck's coming through, just to get playing time.
Yeah.
So I don't even think is Jeff even at the club?
I think he's hanging out with Gideon Zellum somewhere, just having popcorn. But and so Norwich in the next round, which to me it's going to be 90 minutes of Jack Wilshere trying to recreate his magical.
But I'm okay with that.
Goal. Yeah, I know you are. We know you have a massive boner for Jack. And I mean the boner's always there, but usually it gets bigger when Jack's out. In fact, you jack it to Jack, I believe. Oh, but so him getting 90 minutes last week was music to your ears. I'm a little slow to buy stock in Jack Wilshere being the savior and picking up where he left off 6 years ago.
He's a savior. It's just nice to see an Arsenal lad come back to the club and get playing time. I'll leave it at that.
I get that, but let's be honest. There's a lot of people digging him up, as they say, right now, and I think we need to see a little bit more than one 90-minute performance against Doncaster to really feel like he's back. But Elliot, where do you stand on Mr. Wilshere? And hopefully you don't stand on his ankle.
Yeah, I mean, well, so kind of like you with Ox. And by the way, I'll just say let's pump the brakes on the Theo hate, considering he scored the only goal in the game. But I mean. Come on, the guy did score the winning goal,
and then he probably brushed past 85,000 people looking for autographs after the game. But but he did get us through.
But he did get us through. Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, my thing with Theo has always been, and I'll get to Jack in a second. It's just that I don't think Theo ever developed into the player we hoped he would be. But when you compare him with a guy like Ox, for example, Theo has contributed real things to the club. I mean, he scored 19 goals last season. He's had 14 goal, 10 assist seasons. He's been our best big game player and Champions League player for several years, back a few years ago when we actually did things in the Champions League. So, again, I don't think Theo has developed into the player we hoped he would be by any stretch of the imagination. But then you look at the kind of hype people put into people like Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's done the sum total of fuck all. It's just weird to me that Theo gets a lot more of the negative attention than a guy like Ox did. As far as Jack, look, I was the president of the Jack Wilshere fan club after that Barcelona performance, that apocryphal Barcelona performance. And it is a case of a player who seemed to have everything. And when I see him now, I see a player who still has the silkiness and the smoothness of a natural footballer, but doesn't have the sharpness or the same physical traits that he had. So he can still do a no-touch turn as opposed to Elneny, who does the 27-touch turn. Right. He can still collect the ball on that half turn or no-touch turn and turn that into, face goal and look up and see the guy. But when he makes those dribbles through midfield, the ball is a little further away from his feet now, which leads him into those crunching tackles. It used to be on a string right by his toe. Now it's a yard away from him as he tries to drive through the midfield. He's a little heavier on his feet. I think he's added muscle to try to bulk up, protect himself. But that added muscle seems to make him a little more plodding, a little less light on his feet. His touch seems a little heavier. He just looks like a guy who's not as comfortable in his bones and skin as he once was, maybe because his bones are now mostly like
he doesn't
synthetic.
Have any left.
No, exactly. They're like synthetic mesh, and he's going to have like a class action lawsuit for all the like implants in his body or whatever. But I mean,
vaginal mesh.
He's basically half robot.
He is, but unfortunately, like not the parts of the robot that went into like Kolasinac. Like I think the fact with Jack is that there was a player we believed he could be, and I don't think that player exists anymore. But because he's still Jack Wilshere, we still want him to be that. I think now he can be a reasonable squad player who can add something if he can stay fit and get a run of games. The challenge is, will the manager ever trust him enough to put him in as a starter in a key situation? Mm-hmm. It seems that the manager trusts Elneny, who is unspectacular but safe, whereas Jack definitely has a higher ceiling of what he can contribute, but is not safe and not reliable. And the good thing for Jack is between the Carabao Cup or Copacabana Cup, or music and dancing is always in fashion, or between the Copacabana Cup and the Europa League, Jack actually has a chance. I mean, play against Cologne, play against Doncaster, play against Bate Borisov, play against Norwich, he has a chance to get a run of games that could then lead him to having opportunities in the Premier League if he impresses. And that really is a benefit, because if we were still in the Champions League, it would probably just be that Carabao Cup every few weeks until we were out of it, and maybe get 3 games. So this is a chance. Do I think he will take it with 2 hands and it will lead him back into being a first-team candidate? Well, let's put it this way. Probably not, but with Aaron Ramsey and Granit Xhaka seeming to be the only workable midfield partnership we have come up with this year, should one of them have to miss games through suspension or injury, it's anyone's guess who would fill that void. I mean, maybe Elneny looks first in line, but Jack benefits from the fact that we really do not have a lot of reliable options to come in behind Ramsey and Xhaka. So he needs to take the Carabao Cup and the Europa League by storm, and then he puts himself back in the frame to be part of the Premier League setup.
Yeah,
and all he's got to do is wait for the inevitable injury, and then he's in. So
the inevitable injury would likely be to him.
That's
the problem with that theory there.
That's true. Well, I mean that's Jack in a nutshell. That's and you're right. I mean he has plenty of opportunities to get his way back in there. It's just not going to necessarily be in a first team Premier League game. Is it reasonable to bitch and moan about how unimpressive a 1-0 win it was, like we've seen all over Arsenal Twitter and Arsenal Facebook, Arsenal Grinder? I mean, in a cup.
What was the last one?
Oh, I saw your account on there.
It's always reasonable to bitch and moan. I think we know that.
But in a cup tie, a win is a win. There's no extra style points. I mean, yeah, obviously you're going to get people who say, if you can only beat Doncaster 1-0. Or Sutton 2-0. What does that mean when you play Chelsea next week? But we played Chelsea last week and did awfully well against them. So, every game is its own individual thing. But I mean, personally, I'm fine with 1-0. In fact, I actually predicted before the game 1-0, just because I just couldn't see us getting up for a team like Doncaster, which is a problem in and of itself. But
it's not, though, because
are you ultimately satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, we got through, and ultimately, the only game that matters in the cup competition is the final. And so you brought up Sutton from last year's FA Cup run. Yeah, we didn't get up for that match either, but we did when we got to Wembley against Chelsea. And so you just need to get through these rounds, and it doesn't matter if you win 1-0. If we had won 10-0, everyone would have bitched and moaned on Twitter that we were playing Doncaster and that X and YZ didn't get enough assists, or Sanchez didn't play good enough, or he threw his gloves on the ground. With Arsenal, you're never going to win. So we got through. We have Norwich next, and if we make it to the final, that's what matters, And at the end of the day, a win's a win.
Yep, and Norwich are dead mid-table in the championship right now. We play them literally 52 hours after a league game at Goodison Park. I'm not, and that'll lead us into another obvious conversation. But hopefully it'll be an easy game. Might be a little bit of a track game, but honestly, it's the Carpe Diem Cup, so who generally gives a fuck until the final? So Doncaster's done and dusted. Next up was West Brom at home, a Monday evening game, and like I was just referring to, the last thing I want to do is sound like Arsene Wenger, even if I do a worldly impression of the man, by the way, Andy. I'm not saying this to excuse the potential of upcoming poor results, but how in the actual fuck are we playing West Brom on a Monday evening in a game that ends like less than 3 days, 68 hours before an early Thursday kickoff in Belarus, of all places?
Yeah.
I mean, there were 3 games this weekend at least that had both teams that had nothing to do with Europe. One of them was Sunday. Why couldn't they have had that game on a Monday, knowing that we were playing on a Thursday? And it's not about ratings, because the other Monday games this fall include West Ham, Huddersfield, Leicester, West Brom, Brighton, Stoke. So I mean, what the fuck, lads? What's going on there?
I'll let Elliot take this first.
Well, I mean, look, on the one hand, you could say it's no different than playing Saturday, Tuesday, right, for the Champions League. Overall, this is about Sky, I guess, right? I mean, Sky decides who plays when and what games they want for their Monday night games, and they don't really give a fuck because they don't have the Europa League and it doesn't matter to them. I guess, look, on the one hand, I want to say you look at how other leagues treat their teams in European competition, and they do everything in their power to help them succeed. I mean, Bayern Munich played on a Friday ahead of Champions League this week. Should we have been playing on Sunday? Of course we should. But having said that, given the amount of rotation and given the level of the competition and our general disdain for it, there's enough outrage to go around that I just can't work myself up about this too much. I think it's stupid, but it's down to Sky, and it just, honestly, there are so many more important things to be outraged about that I'll just kind of pass on this one.
Yeah, it's a bit weird because I never understood why the FA aren't friendlier to teams playing in Europe, because it benefits them just as much to have the coefficients and have more teams playing in Europe, and the further you go in the competition. So,
do they have any influence over Sky, though?
Well, they should. They should. They should be the ones that come out and say, well, unfortunately, Sky, Arsenal are playing in this tie, and we need them to do well, and so, no, they can't. But at the end of the day, and I think Ola said it yesterday on the Gooner Talk, we have a big enough squad to balance the shitty schedule, and I doubt we'll see more than 2 or 3 players who played Monday play on Thursday. This is really going to hurt us if we do go deep in the competition. And so hopefully the schedules do get looked at that point. But, we're going to Belarus with probably he already has a squad in mind, barring any injuries between now and then. And so as Elliot said, it's no different from Saturday, Tuesday, but the semantics around it obviously are talking points for the media and the press, and I don't know if that trickles down to the team, but you would just think the FA would have the backs of the teams playing in Europe a little bit more, because we've seen this happen in the past as well, where we have a game against Barcelona and then all of a sudden we're playing Tottenham or Chelsea the next week, and it's 3 or 4 days out, and it's like, can we move these around a little bit? Can we, and which teams are in Europe before the schedule's released. So before the schedule,
and before the games got moved,
exactly. So take a look at that and I don't know, adjust accordingly. But we have a big enough squad, and it shouldn't be an issue. And like I said, I doubt we're going to see much, if any, of those players who played on Monday play Thursday.
It shouldn't be an issue, but guess who's going to turn it into an issue, and who already actually has started commenting on it. And that's the part that frustrates me. I think we should be able to win 3 games in 7 days. We
have to do it over Christmas period. There's no difference there.
Oh, absolutely. Except everybody has to do it. But it is a little different than Saturday, Tuesday, because the Saturday games are usually earlier in the day, and then the Tuesday ones
you're right.
It's
It's night to a morning. Yep,
and because on a Saturday, that's really, other than one Friday night game, that's the earliest you can play. Whereas in this one, there were 2 days that they could have played earlier than the one that we had set up. But it isn't that I'm concerned that it's going to hurt us. It's that I'm concerned it's going to become an excuse. And we're going to have our friend Arsene Wenger talking on Saturday after a potentially underwhelming performance. Sunday against a Brighton team that we should roll over and start talking about how the team was tired and jaded from their travel. So that's the only reason it's notable to me is it's a built-in excuse. Hopefully,
there's going to be enough of a change in the lineup that the excuse will fall on the 11 players on the pitch. And I could see maybe Ozil plays Thursday night to get match fitness, or maybe he's rested until Sunday. But Mike, the team should be so different that hopefully he doesn't bring up that excuse of, well, Jack had to play too. Well, no, because he didn't play on Monday. He just warmed up. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens post Thursday. But
the area where it becomes an issue, guys, is the fact that the squad has depth in some places and then no depth in others. So,
sure.
We have a surfeit of quality attacking options who can be thrown out there, at least quality by Europa League standards. We have no backup right wing back. We have no backup left wing back. You could say Monreal, but he's our starting left center back. So you can't count him as a rotational option for left wing back. And that's when you start running into the problem of either playing youth players out of position, which we saw against Doncaster just doesn't work. Reece Nelson and Ainsley Maitland-Niles are not wing backs. Debussy is obviously, in exile, and rightfully so. There really are no options. And then you say, well, we could play Callum Chambers at right wing back, but then who do you draft into center back? The concern I have in terms of depth is it's all well and good having Iwobi and Theo and Giroud who can all come in up front. But when you're talking about Maitland-Niles and Chambers and Holding and Reece Nelson as four of your back five, that's where you start to see the rapid drop off in quality. And so I just, I wonder how we cope with that, because the Europa League is not the Carabao Cup. These teams can beat you, and you can't expect to get away with the kind of disjointed performance and haphazard lineup that we put out for Doncaster away in European competition.
In Belarus and in Belgrade. That's not going to happen.
But you think on paper, those players that Elliot just mentioned, and I'm asking you both just out and out, they should be able to beat Bate Borisov, right?
No, I don't agree at all. Not even remotely. No.
But so let me ask the question.
I think a tie, a draw would be a good result given the everything surrounding that game, the travel, the atmosphere, the everything. I don't know that it should be an easy win with those guys.
Have the talent up front to score goals against them, I do. But I will say this: we underrate the massive step up from youth ranks to first team. It is so much bigger. We want to anoint these kids as ready for the first team. And look how rarely they even make it in a rotational capacity, let alone a starting capacity. Now you're asking them to play out of position, partnered with players who never play. Look, I'll tell you something, Andy. If you brought Ainsley Maitland-Niles in to be left wing back with 10 of our regular starters, you say, okay, we can hide him, we can protect him, and he can get through it. But when you bring him in to play next to Holding, who's not playing, and Mertesacker, who's not playing, and Chambers, who's not playing, and Reece Nelson, who's not a wingback, and Jack, who's not playing, and Iwobi, who's playing a little bit, and Theo and Giroud, who aren't playing. Now you're saying we're going to take a youth player, step him up to starting, away in Europe, out of position, with 10 other guys who never start. That's the problem. It's all of those factors. It's the massive step up from youth to senior ranks. It's the step up into a position that's not his natural position. And then it's to play with 10 other guys who also aren't used to playing together. So there's just no cohesion there at all. And you're saying that team should be able to get by. Well, given the quality of the attacking options, you may still nick it because you may just still be too good in that part of the pitch. But to me, no, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that is enough quality to get past Bate Borisov. I think Doncaster is a really, 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 really bad team. And we really, really, really struggled with them at home with that kind of lineup. Now we're going away to a European team. I don't think I don't think the manager, and to be honest with you, I think the manager will rotate probably less than you're expecting. I think he will look at it and say, I've got a home game against Brighton on Sunday. I can probably just about eke it out. Then I've got 2 weeks off for an international break. I think he's going to put more quality into that starting lineup than you might think. I think he's going to try to get away with maybe playing Kolasinac and Bellerin in that game.
And maybe I just asked the question, if you look at Per, and I completely agree with you with the fluidity and the players who are coming off of long layovers, right, and haven't played for a while. But if you look at Callum Chambers, Rob Holding, and Per, who more than likely will be our back three, do they not walk into that Bate team based off of talent alone? And so
I don't think so. I think Chambers was terrible against Doncaster. I don't know that. I mean, look, Chambers was really good against Middlesbrough last year, so maybe I'm being unfair. And Holding is a talent. You're right. Like, could any of them potentially be starters for Bate? Yes. But we're not talking about guys who are starting for Bate day in, day out. We're talking about guys who look really out of form. Mm-hmm. Defense is a lot about experience and positioning and partnerships. Defense isn't really just about talent. Like, you cannot play for a year, and if you're a fast, powerful striker, you can step into a team and do your thing. I think defense is about partnerships and positioning and rhythms and communication. And with them being as young as they are, as inexperienced as they are, and inexperienced together as a partnership. And I'm not trying to be argumentative, by the way. I'm just.
Oh no, I love it. It's a great debate.
That's how I am. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a miserable son of a bitch. But like, I just think in general that we, you can look at this through Arsene Wenger's whole career. He has never been good at rotating. He's not good at it. He's best when his lineup decisions are forced for him. Sometimes injuries are the best thing for him in a way, because he's forced to put a lineup out there. When he starts rotating, look, he tinkered 2 seasons ago. He tinkered last season. Alexis was up front. He was doing well at striker. The manager tinkered. He brought Giroud back in. Things started to fall apart. When this manager rotates, I just don't think he knows how to do it, because he throws players out on the pitch irrespective of whether they mesh or they're a fit for that. And I think we've seen that all too often. We saw it with Ramsey against West Brom in that one of the two behind the striker role, where he really, that was Ramsey's worst performance of the season against West Brom. So I worry about him trying to rotate too much for this Bate game. Now, when I say worry, I give a fuck if we lose it, because we're still going to go through the group. Yeah. I really have no concerns about it. So am I really worried? No. But do I think that we maybe overrate our ability to just make 11 changes and put youth players out of position in the back five and get away with it away in Europe? I mean, I've seen us lose away with pretty strong sides at places like Braga, in the Champions League. And I don't know that Braga is a hell of a lot better than Bate Borisov. So, that's a lot of rambling for an issue that maybe didn't deserve it, but that's kind of where I stand on.
Quick question, Elliot. Which is Arsene Wenger worse at, rotating or zipping up his jacket?
Well, now that he's got that labia jacket, he doesn't have to zip it up anymore.
Labia jacket. We talked briefly about Mesut Ozil. He was the conspicuous absence in yesterday's starting 11, but other than that, and possibly including that, it seemed like everyone was pretty happy with that starting 11. People playing in the position that they normally would be in. A lot of positivity. And what was your feedback in the 29 quotes 29 tweets you probably sent out about the starting lineup?
Yeah, well, look, the funny thing is I was pretty encouraged, because I thought that more forward role would naturally suit Ramsey, who likes to make forward runs, who maybe isn't always as effective in a defensive capacity and doesn't always provide the linking play with Xhaka. And this would give him a lot more freedom to get in, to make those third man runs and cause havoc in the attack. And it didn't work. Didn't work at all. We couldn't build up through midfield. They pressed us in midfield. They forced us to wide positions. They pinned us against the touchline. They made it really hard and choked off our linking play. And we wound up going long a lot. We wound up not being able to play through midfield a lot. Ramsey had his worst game of the season statistically. He completed about 70% of his passes. He had the second fewest touches and second fewest passes of any outfield player aside from Lacazette, any starting outfield player aside from Lacazette, for a guy who normally is right there with Xhaka for the lead or second, most touches and most passes, and a guy who's passing, closer to 88, 89% on the season. To be around 70% is not great. I thought he struggled in that position. I think his rapport with Alexis is definitely a concern and doesn't necessarily work. And so overall, I thought we did all right. I mean, look, it was a job done in a sense. I mean, on XG, which is a statistic that I think helps you evaluate what your eyes saw, I think we were 1.8 to 0.8. So it's pretty comprehensive, plus a penalty. So 2.6 to 0.8 with the penalty. So overall, I mean, I don't think you can complain too much. I just don't know that Ramsey worked in that position. I think once again, we're back at an issue that I've talked about a lot on our podcast, which is that Shaka Ramsey looks like the only midfield pairing that really, really works. And that against pressing sides, we really struggle without that extra man in midfield. That the three center backs gives us protection against counters to some extent, but that the two in midfield is too easily overrun and too easily choked off by a press. And West Brom's press faded in the second half, and we saw the effects of that dramatically as they just stopped being a force in the game altogether for the last half hour or so. Yeah. But for the first hour, the press was giving us trouble and choking off our midfield buildup. I think otherwise, look, perfectly fine. Great to see Lacazette play the way he did. The big concern I have coming out of the game is Mustafi, who just looks like, he's playing with grease on the bottom of his boots or something. He is a worry. I think
he was the opposite of the man of the match yesterday.
Yeah,
he was the boy of the match.
On the whole, on the balance, we probably had as many bad calls go against us as they did against them to some extent. I think if they get that penalty and, oh, by the way, potential red card early, we're dissecting potentially a very different result. So, a little bit of rub of the green situation with the refereeing there, because I don't know that we started so well. But in the end, we made it comfortable,
Which is the best, which brings me to my next question for Andy, which is we definitely didn't get the short end of the stick on the refereeing today. I mean, remember this game, whiners, when you complain about the vast ref wing conspiracy against us. But, we avoided what, like you just said, Elliot, what would look like a bang-on penalty against Mustafi, which ultimately led to an advantage that was played, which is odd. An amazing save from Cech, and then just an absolute shank off of the rebound. And ultimately won a free kick that, despite Poulis's disgusting comments and ridiculous whining and complaining, which of course he won't be charged by the FA for, about Alexis diving, it was still a little bit questionable. It was a soft foul in my eyes, and of course that leads to Lacazette's goal. But definitely not the short end of the refereeing stick. Andy, Lacazette is a goal scorer. He's Johnny on the spot, Johnny Lacazette, right place, right time. But it's not a coincidence, is it, Andrino?
No, he's what we've been looking for since Van Persie left, and his movement, his ability to get in behind defenders. He's got power when he shoots from outside of the 18. I mean, he's that natural goal scorer we've needed. Going back to the refereeing, we're so often, I mean, it's a game, and so we oftentimes bitch and moan that we're not on the right side of the refereeing. I wonder, had Rodriguez stayed down on the Mustafi challenge, if the penalty would have been awarded. The fact that he popped up so quickly, you got to give him respect there, because most players would have thrown their arms up and screamed and held 6 different body parts. And the fact that he got up and took the shot's probably why he didn't get the penalty. But we did get it.
It's just ridiculous that's the way it is.
No, it is ridiculous. But we got lucky, and Mustafi's challenge was just atrocious. I mean, he should never have gone to ground like he did. But at the end of the day, we got extremely lucky, and I think you can even debate maybe the Ramsey penalty. For me, it was a penalty because he rounded the defender and he was on goal, and he was able to play a through ball, if not take a shot, and so that's why he was impeded. But, I think the commentators over here made the point, if that happened down somewhere else on the pitch, would it have been a free kick? I'm not so sure. But at the end of the day, who gives a shit?
That's what we say when we win a game like the Burnley game last year, or the 2 Burnley games with the late penalties and the Koscielny maybe handball. It's easy to say who gives a shit when we win the game that way, but who gives a shit?
But one of the biggest things for me from the match was how well Nacho Monreal played again, and his goal line clearance was definitely the play of the season so far for us. Elliot, was his goal line clearance worthy of a statue, or just should we name one stand after him?
I mean, look, go as far as you want. I think at a minimum, given that we put like the faces of 5 guys on the Emirates during the audacious stunt, like none of whom actually ever contributed anything to Arsenal from that point on. Like, I'd be perfectly fine if we did like a wrap like they do for cars or something that was just like a Nacho Monreal face wrap around the Emirates or something. Look, the guy is the quintessentially underappreciated player.
Yep.
He's not a great looking guy like Giroud, which I know that sounds silly, but I do think.
Yes.
Look, the fact is, when you got guys that look like models, like Ramsey or Giroud, they get more attention. They just do. They stand out. They're eye-catching.
Nacho was devastated. He was gutted when Gabriel got sold because
I know.
He had to take his rightful spot.
You stand next to Gabriel, you look fucking fantastic, man. You look like a male model. But between that and the fact that
many chicks until
he's not particularly muscular. He's not particularly tall. He's not particularly fast. Like he's kind of 5 out of 10 in a lot of qualities, except the quality that matters most, which is the way he plays the game. And he reads it well. He tackles well. He understands where to be. He can get into the opposition half and make the right pass or the right final ball. He understands tracking back. I mean, look, you look at some of the really good defenders who left Arsenal as, bumbling wrecks of men, defenders who had their careers and confidence destroyed by playing for Arsene Wenger's Arsenal sides. You have to be really spectacular to look like a good defender playing for Arsenal. And for Monreal to look as good as he does is a testament to him individually, because he is not in a system set up to make defenders look good. I think between he and Koscielny, you have the only 2 defenders I can think of in a decade that have really covered themselves in glory playing in this Arsenal system. And he's just been criminally underappreciated. He's played fullback for us. He's played center back for us. He's played the left center back in a 3 for us, and excelled really at all of those positions.
Except when he was playing left back in a 4 with Iwobi in front of him, which I think is becoming clear was not really his fault.
He's been exposed like everybody. I mean, Koscielny's been exposed. They all get their turn to look bad in playing for Arsene Wenger in the back. But I really enjoy seeing players like this, the less heralded players who for some reason, and look, as someone who is critical of Arsene Wenger, this is a purchase that has just been quietly brilliant, really quietly brilliant. At a time when we were moving on from Gail Clichy, when Kieran Gibbs was never going to develop into the player that we needed him to be, when we had lost Ashley Cole, and the idea was that Gail Clichy was going to become the future, and he never lived up to what he could be, and we kind of muddled through. And Nacho Monreal was an unheralded acquisition who became, Gibbs was supposed to be the heir apparent, and Nacho Monreal just made himself undroppable, and since that time has become one of the most important players for the club. I couldn't.
Was he a January signing?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I feel like
I don't even remember, but that does sound right. Yeah.
And which makes it even more rare. And a 31-year-old who's playing every week for Arsene Wenger when he used
Santos at left back, for Christ's sake. Just the depth we have plumbed. Armand Traore at Old Trafford. It is really incredible what he has provided for us. And with the fixation on players like Oxlade-Chamberlain or, Bellerin, who has deserved it certainly, and a Holding, Rob Holding. Rob Holding didn't cost £50 million like John Stones. Ha ha ha. Here's Nacho Monreal just quietly being our best defensive player in the team for the better part of 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Well said. You can't argue that. You can't argue that at all. And it's crazy that people still give him shit. And I think now that we've switched to this back 3, when you were first starting to see Nacho in that role, you kept saying, why isn't Holding playing? Why isn't Callum playing? Or Per, and now you see it and you're like, it makes sense. It's very rarely is he making these mistakes or errors. And like you'd mentioned, there are some matches where he has an off game, but that's very few and far between. And he has been the heir apparent to this role, keeping out big figures. And so it's great to see, and I hope he continues. And so I think what we're pulling away from this is that we're going to erect a statue of him at some point.
I think so. We're just going to we're going to erect something in his honor.
Yeah.
Speaking of roles on the team, we have a penalty taker now, Mr. Alexandre Lacazette. Unlike that tit Jamie Vardy, who screwed up a chance for them to take points off of Liverpool because he hit his 7th consecutive penalty kick right down the middle. into Mignolet's stupid-ass body. But there's not going to be anyone trying to Neymar the ball out of Lacazette's hands when we get spot kicks from here on out. Is there, Elliot? I mean, it's his job now, right?
No, and I mean, look, there's so much I love about this. The fact that he had the character. I didn't really see if Alexis fought him for it, but that he had the character to grab the ball, to make it his, to step up, no fucking around, no slow run up, no mind games with the keeper. I've always believed that you should be able to, from that distance, and this comes from someone who's never played football at any kind of competitive level, that you should be able to place the ball from that distance into a corner to the point where the keeper just can't save it. He kept it low. He put it in the corner, and the keeper couldn't get there. And I saw him criticized before we acquired him as people saying his statistics are inflated because of his penalties.
Right.
But when you see him take a penalty and convert it coolly and, not struggle, that's really fucking nice, because at the end of the day, being up 2-0 ended that game as a competitive fixture. West Brom just basically kind of threw in the towel after that, as opposed to a nervy fucking final 10 minutes of balls being thrown into our box and watching a comedy of errors of us trying to clear it. It really made the difference. I loved it. I love the mentality of taking the ball, of owning that opportunity, of not fucking around with it, of sliding it home coolly. And that doesn't make takes. Nobody does. But it made a really nice change. And while we don't get a lot of penalties and refs hate Arsenal and all that, penalties are as clear a goal scoring chance as you can possibly get, and you need to convert them. And converting those few penalties you get over the course of a season can make a huge difference for where you wind up in the table. So, yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing.
Especially when we're not saving any penalties that are against us. But
no, I mean, you know what? Put fucking Nacho Monreal in goal for the penalties. I'm convinced he'd save it.
Absolutely. The quiet confidence to just step up there and know that, that you've got as good of chances of getting it in as possible is something that's been missing in this team. And I've got to think that, and Wenger's talked about his pecking order for penalties in the past. I've got to think it's known before the game starts that no matter who's on the pitch at the time, if Lacazette's on the pitch, he's taking it, and that includes you, Alexis.
It's another thing for Alexis to have a little whisper in his ear after the penalties award, say, "Hey, I'd like to take this," and the guy say, "Oh, okay, Alexis, yeah, you know what I mean?" I think you still need to have that. You still need to have that conviction where you grab the ball, you put it on the spot. There's no fucking around. There's no conversation that happens. You just go about your business. And since we did bust on Czech just a little bit, bang on him about never saving a penalty, I'll make this point. That passage of play where they didn't get the penalty awarded, but then got the shot off.
Oh my God!
That save he made was sensational, and it got overshadowed by the kerfuffle around the penalty. But that is his save of the season, no question.
Yeah, I mean, other than a mistake or two against Leicester, I think he's had a very, very solid season so far, and I'm glad to see it because he should be the number one, and he shops with the common people at the Army. Yeah. It's crazy because I wouldn't say that we've looked particularly impenetrable at the back lately. Andy, about being penetrable at the back, but we haven't really given up any real goals in the last 5 matches on the trot. I mean, just that fluky goal with Ospina's failed clearance. So that's refreshing, and I'll take 4 straight clean sheets headed into the next 8 subpar opponents that we play over the next few weeks. So all of a sudden we're becoming the 1-0, the 2-0 to the Arsenal again, and it's refreshing to see. So, Andy, who's your man of the match? I have a feeling I know, but
honestly, I don't think you do. I was really impressed with.
Well, actually, in the chat box yesterday, you did mention that Nacho was your honorable mention. So let's hear who your man of the match.
For me, I was really impressed with Elneny. I thought he was tracking really well. He was breaking up play. He wasn't, caught out of position very much. He like Elliot kind of reflected on earlier, he is just a safety net, and I thought he did that very well yesterday. He broke up play where he needed. He distributed well. And if we were going to push Ramsey up forward as we did, I thought he just, for me, was in a lot of positions just to break up play and just be that annoying central midfielder to niggle at other players. And obviously Nacho and Lacazette, having the 2 goals were great, but I was so impressed with him, and I don't often say that enough about the player, And so for me, I'm going to give him my man of the match.
He is thrilled with that right now.
What an honor.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean, he's putting up a statue of his hair in his office right now. Elliot, what do you? I based on your comments, I can only imagine who you think the man of the match was.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it would be Monreal, but I just think for this game, I'm actually going to go with Lacazette because I think it was a pretty disjointed performance, and we kind of were a little bit ragged, and we got the job done. I don't think we played poorly, but I certainly don't think we were fluid. And you look at the goals he scored, and it's an opportunistic header from a rebound where he was first to react, and it's a confident penalty that we were maybe a little fortunate to get, and matches swing on those little half chances, or just being a little more alert than your opposition, and he did it. And that's why we went out and bought a striker. I mean, this is what you get when you buy a fucking striker. Someone who puts away their penalties and someone who is in the spot to convert those chances when the ball is loose in the box. And while he is so much more than that, he can turn on the ball and he can nutmeg a player and he can make the slide little pass and he's got speed to run in behind. He's got so much to his game. But we have players who can do those things. We didn't really have a mobile striker to get on the ends of plays like what happened with the Alexis free kick. And maybe that's a little unfair to Giroud. Maybe that's exactly the kind of situation that he converts to. But I think 2 goals at home for Lacazette, really emphasizing the start he's off to, getting him more confidence. We've got some, pretty cream puff opponents coming up in the league for a little while before we get back into a tough run of fixtures. And for him to just add to his confidence and add to his sense of fitting into the side and really being at home at the Emirates ahead of the schedule getting tougher. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. So for me, while I loved what Monreal contributed, while I think Elneny grew into the match and was a nice safe pair of boots, so to speak, I got to give it to the man who scored the 2 goals.
Yeah, and much needed because the media, much as we don't want to pay attention to them, is already starting the before the game the conversation about Morata, Lukaku, Lacazette, and I was listening to TalkSport on my way to the restaurant to watch the game, and it's already starting. So for him to come away with a brace, however he got them, was important.
And he had a goal wrongly ruled out against Stoke, so that's one he should have had. That would have turned the game. I mean, it's
just a narrative that is going to happen. So
the manager doesn't pick him. That's the other thing. I mean, we can get into why the manager picks people or doesn't pick people, but when he's been picked, he's done the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And just 2 really good teaching moments in that game. If you have a young child who plays football, just the way that Lacazette reacted. I said yesterday on the Gooner Talk, if there was a wide shot of penalty kicks and of free kicks like the one that Sanchez took yesterday, it's beautiful to see which players are paying attention, which ones are reactive and follow the ball in, and which ones are standing there with their hands on their hips. And Lacazette is certainly the former, not the latter. And then, of course, the not giving up on the play from the Notchmeister to be able to clear the ball off. That's another teaching moment for kids who defend. But I am going to give it to the Notchmeister. The goal line clearance was amazing. His Opta rating yesterday, for those that are interested, and I know that's not your preferred statistic, Elliot, but an 8.9 for a defender is pretty darn impressive, especially when you don't score a goal. He was all over the place. And the Nacho face, I mean, we talked about him not being perhaps the best-looking footballer in the world, but when he feels like he's been wronged, either a foul that isn't a card or a tackle that isn't called a foul, the face that he puts on, where he looks disgusted, his teeth start jutting out of his mouth. I love it. It's so ugly. It's hilarious, but it just makes me love him more. So he's my guy for this match. I just have to touch briefly on the worst hair for the match for the 155th straight game is Hector Bellerin. Yeah, did he have fucking pigtails yesterday?
No, that's the full-on Bentner samurai top knot.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going with 19, and I'm dating myself here a little bit. I'm going with 1981 Bjorn Borg right there. That was just completely unnecessary, and I spit out a couple buffalo wings when every time they cut to him during the match. But yeah, he needs a hair counselor because it's just not getting any better. All right, so that puts that game to bed. 2 wins, 2 clean sheets. At the risk of unnecessarily bringing up Arsene Wenger again in a negative light, well, frankly, he's been in the middle of one of his, patented "where the hell did this come from" run of good form. The guy opened his mouth and said something that was taken slightly out of context, but still probably a pretty silly thing to say about the Champions League. Technically, he was talking about the ratings and the watchability of the group stage specifically. And in that sense, his comments are fairly valid. But he's still quoted as saying the Champions League has lost some of its sparkle the year after we don't get into it. So, I mean, in my opinion, the quote's being blown out of proportion. But, I mean, who are the public relation wizards who are letting him come out and say shit like this, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good look, is it? It's kind of up there with the Steph Curry's no longer invited to the White House. It's, it's like, I didn't want to go to your stupid birthday party anyway.
Right. You don't say that the moment you're not in it anymore.
Do I think that Arsene Wenger believes that? I mean, I think Arsene Wenger talks himself into believing that whatever situation he's in is the situation that makes the most sense. I don't know. And I mean, is he right? Look, not for me. I still love the Champions League. I know some people couldn't give a fuck about it. They think it's a stupid competition. They think it's boring until the knockout rounds.
Dortmund and Madrid is about to start in about 8 minutes. I mean,
yeah. By the way, I've got 8 minutes till I got to go. But
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah. But it's one of these things that for a man who is so smart, it's just weird to me that he is as unable to manage his public statements better than he does. I mean, when he came out with that whole thing about having players going into the last year of their contract is ideal. Having multiple players in the final year of their contract is ideal. This thing he came out with the other day where he said, oh, well, the finances are changing and more players are either going to, be paid extravagant salaries or wind down their contracts till they're done. Everything he's saying lately is self-serving. Now, it may just be that he says, you know what, fuck it. I have no reason that I need to be honest with the media. I'm going to say everything that favors us is true. And that may just be his default position. Never admit weakness. Never admit bad planning or a negative situation. And if that's the case, then so be it. That's the strategy.
In the face of all evidence to the contrary.
Well, right, but we've seen it all summer with the having players going into the final year of the contract is advantageous, and the market is due for a collapse, and then we'll be poised to strike, and then there's a bubble, and then more and more players are going to be running down their contract, so this is a situation that can't be avoided, and then the Champions League is losing its luster. These are all self-serving statements, and at the end of the day, you have two options with Arsene Wenger at this point: tune him out, ignore what he says, or just be increasingly frustrated by a man who sounds, to me at least, a little bit out of touch with reality.
Or buy in completely to the point where you sound
but the mental gymnastics you have to go through. Yeah, I mean, come on, the mental gymnastics you have to go through to agree with. Look. Ultimately, I will judge him on the business he does building the team and the results the team get. So fine. I mean, his words don't matter that much, but he could be doing himself a lot more favors than some of the shit he's coming out with.
That's what I'm thinking. And Andy, he also came out with something this week, kind of tipping his hand at the possible next captain of the club, little Rambinho Ramsey. What do you think about that potential pick?
I mean, he was captain for Wales for quite some time. I don't know if he still is, but I know back it was probably 5-6 years ago. He was made captain. At the end of the day, he's a player who plays a lot. I never see him be that voice on the pitch where he's turning around barking orders. Maybe he's like that in the locker room, but I just think that we should focus on getting our current captain on the pitch more often, and since Arteta, I mean, we haven't had was it the FA Cup final where it was the captain started for the first time in God knows how many matches. Yeah. So if Ramsey's the right person, personally I don't think he is, but I guess we don't see him in the locker room, so maybe he has a voice. But if you're good enough to captain your country, you're probably good enough to captain the club you play for.
He supposedly is one of the players that gave Alexis a piece of his mind last season or early this season. So maybe there's something that we don't know.
Yeah.
I'm of course the classic overreactor. I'm ready to slap the armband on Kolasinac. I'm that in love with him, and that would allow me to buy a replica captain's armband and use it to wipe up my weekly seedgasm.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Sorry, Elliot. I did tell you before we started that you will need therapy after this.
You did, and you were right.
So, user questions. We have a few this week from Fredo in New Orleans, who is joining us on the next podcast next week to talk about Gooner Gras, which is an amazing event. Elliot, I don't know if you've been or if you plan to go, but love to see you there. But he's asking who's going to start at wingback come Thursday. And first of all, I don't appreciate him telling me what to do. I will come Thursday if I want to. But you've said they're not wingbacks, but are we going to see Maitland-Niles and Reece Nelson in the wingback position on Thursday?
I mean, I don't see how we can after their performance against Doncaster. My guess is that the manager will have the good sense to realize that's not workable. I mean, maybe he'll try a mix, Maitland-Niles on one wing and Bellerin on the other, or Kolasinac on one wing and Maitland-Niles on the other, try to get away with it. I think given that it's Brighton at home on a Sunday followed by an international break, he may try to get away with a more experienced back five without as much rotation and cross his fingers. Now, unfortunately, when this manager tries to get away with something, things go bad. I can think back to last season when he played Santi Cazorla in a totally meaningless midweek international European fixture when he should have rotated him out and he got hurt and we haven't seen him since. Usually these kinds of risks don't pay off for him, but I just don't think that he can go to the back five he used against Doncaster and have any faith in it. I think most of the rotation will occur further up the pitch where we'll see Jack come back into the side, Iwobi come back into the side, Theo come back into the side, Giroud come back into the side, that kind of rotation. And then he might try to roll the dice and rotate less in the back where he just seems less able to get away with it right now.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see 2:40. No, actually it's a 1:00 game on the East Coast on Thursday. So it's an early one. So
we
noon.
just have all these fucking ridiculous, shameful kickoff times now. It's just incredible.
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean,
our Cologne game started at like midnight, local time. This one's starting at like 10 in the morning. It's just insane.
Yeah, I thought those were reserved for like when you played in Siberia. They started it early because otherwise you would freeze to death. But I guess there's so many teams in the Europa League that they have to split the games between a 6 p.m. UK and an 8 p.m. UK start time. But Peter Kennelly from Australia, for whom the game will probably start at like 6 in the evening, should we still sell Lacazette? He's scoring too many goals for my liking. I think we pointed out that he went like 3 minutes in his first game without scoring, and I was ready to sell him. But we'll just treat that as a comment, not a question. Next question from Rob Ford. My buddy Rob, Twitter handle @RobFord2K5, also known as 3C, and I will not say what the C stands for. He's always thinking about pie. Elliot, have you been to Piebury Corner in one of your many trips?
It's funny. I have never been to Piebury Corner. No, I have not. I have heard. Yeah,
you must go. Andy, you were just there last month, so I'll ask you this question: what is your favorite pie? Who did you place into your mouth, and did you spit or swallow?
Oh God, I'd
like to blame that part of it on Rob, but that's actually me.
I have the Thierry Henry, venison and red wine. Anything that has a red wine reduction, Mike, matches my class and sophistication.
I love reductions, except for breast reductions. Those are not cool.
So I had the Thierry Henry when I went.
Okay, and that is usually one of. And you're going to act like you just had one, though, right?
No, I did just have one, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thierry Henry's definitely in the running. Tony Adams would be the other one. Steak and Ale, it's fantastic. And Elliot, you've got to go the next time you're there.
Absolutely.
Game day.
Having a child has interfered with my travel plans pretty substantially.
Yeah, I know. That sucks, doesn't it?
It's work.
It's the word. Children suck. And lastly, Andy, from the excellently named Nacho the Gooner, do you think it's him?
Yes.
Do you think this guy's been sending us questions for a couple months now, and I think it might be him. Do you have any regrets of criticizing Theo after he scored the game winner against Doncaster? Asked and answered, I think.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I think he prefaced this on Twitter that he was going to ask the question, and no, I don't.
Andy's like Larson Wenger. I mean, he's not going to go back and self-analyze.
You know what? If Theo was on 80,000, 60,000 a week, I'd never criticize him, but he's on double that, and so the performances need to be better. And against Doncaster, I'm sorry, but he should be scoring 3 or 4 goals.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, users, for your questions this week and every week. Picks of the week. We can skip this week, the recap of last week, because...
no, Mike, let's hear it.
I'd like to skip it, actually.
No,
Andy.
Mike, tell everyone what happened.
All right, so this wasn't the best week for me to put up a big 0. I scored 0 points. Don't get used to it. And of course, when I'm scoring 0, our guest Gav from the She War, man, did he have his picks game on fleek? Is that what the kids are saying these days?
Like Elliot, I'm a new dad, so I don't know what trends are happening in the world. I just have dirty nappies, and that's it.
There you go. All right, well, he picked up 4 points, all because of Vardy not hitting his penalty to one side or the other. He got the score exactly right in the Leicester-Liverpool game. So after match day 6, we have a new leader, which is the guest spot. So, Elliot, you are pulling a Pep Guardiola or a Jose Mourinho and just coming into a side that's already stacked.
Stacked. Nice, yeah.
You're in the lead with 12 points after match day 6. I've got 11, and he's still pulling up the rear with 8. So this week we have 3 games, as always, match day 7, and what we're going to do is pick a winner, if you think there will be one, and the score. Man City at Chelsea is the first one. We've got a run pretty much every week where there's 2 top 6 teams playing each other. This might be the end of City's rampage. Chelsea's organized defense may be able to keep City to less than 5 goals, which has been something that no one else has been able to do. I'm a big believer in addition by subtraction, and they got rid of the stench of Diego Costa, so I can actually see them running off a bunch of good games and winning this one 2-1. So, Andy, what do you think?
I thought I asked you to address me in this segment as defending champion of the picks of the week.
I must not have gotten that memo. I think my Twitter machine broke.
City at Chelsea. Yeah, God, their firepower is just ridiculous. I'm going to go 2-2 draw.
Okay. And Elliot, what do you think?
Well, I mean, City have an easy home game against Shakhtar. Well, that's not easy, but easy-ish. Chelsea go to Atletico Madrid on Wednesday and then play Saturday. I think that could make a difference. I mean, Atletico Madrid are a very tough side. They're going to have to play a full-strength side to hope to get any kind of result. They're a physical team. I think it could wear them down. City have the bigger squad, so they can rotate more. They've got a nice, comfy home game. I just think City look unstoppable in attack right now. I'll say 3-1 to City.
Okay. Well, yeah, you did a lot more research than I did. I didn't think about the extra day of rest, but, that's what leaders do. They do the research.
That's why we're on top of the leaderboard. Yep.
Exactly. Liverpool at Newcastle. Actually went to this fixture a couple seasons ago and got to enjoy Newcastle beating Liverpool at home, and then, of course, getting relegated the same year. I wish I knew whether Ox was going to get the start or not, but I'm going to guess he's going to be on the bench, so I'll take Liverpool 2-1. Andy?
Yeah, I don't see Newcastle being able to do much. I'm going to say 3-0 Liverpool.
Okay. And Elliot?
Is it the game where Mane comes back, or is he still out? You know?
You're asking us to do your research for you now?
I mean, I've lost track. I know he was supposed to be out for three games, I guess. He missed 2 in the league. And
Carabao Cup probably was the 3rd.
So... I mean, he makes such a difference.
They're saying he might be back against Moscow this week. So,
well, but that wouldn't matter for a ban, right? I mean, the question is whether he's served his 3-match suspension.
Yeah, so if he's back, then he's back.
I think he's back. That's great analysis.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
He's back, baby.
Assuming he's back, because I think he is. I think they'll just have a little too much. I mean, these are the teams they struggle with, though. Teams that can sit back and defend and give them the ball. But ultimately, I'll give him a 2-1 win.
If he dies,
Liverpool.
he dies. Okay. Brighton at Arsenal, of course, is the final one. And, the reverse curse is working. It's not doing wonders for my picks game, but I picked West Brom last week specifically so that Arsenal would win the game, and it worked. So you can thank me for this little run that we're on now. But I'm going to put it to the test because I'm going to pick Arsenal to win in a 1-0 kind of version of some sloppiness that shows their fatigue that Arsene Wenger can then complain about. But so if we lose this game because I'm picking them to win, I'll go back next week to the reverse curse. So 1-0 to the Arsenal. Andy.
Yeah, Brighton don't. 3-0. 3-0 Arsenal.
Brighton don't. 3-0. That'll be the title for the pod. All right, Elliot.
Oh man,
Will we have enough in the tank?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. These are tough games for me to call because I find that in games like this we tend to take our foot off the gas. I think if we're really up for it, we could really dominate them. I'll say a comfortable 2-0.
All righty. So that's our picks. We'll come back next Sunday night late to find out how it went. So Elliot, for your podcast, do you look at metrics about where people are tuning in from? Like, are you able to see what? Yeah,
we're able to see that. Yeah, I mean, we split pretty evenly between the U.S. and the U.K. And then, obviously there's some people from all over the world, and we're happy to have people join us. But the overwhelming majority from the U.S. and the U.K. and Canada as well.
For sure. And what surprised us most when we first started doing our podcast is those other countries where you get some stragglers coming in and so we've been keeping track and we're up to this week we added our 98th country.
Congratulations.
Recently, and 96 of them have one listen, but no, I'm just kidding. But recently we added Mauritius, Fiji, Kuwait, Vanuatu, and China, otherwise known as China. Who, by the way, the listener from China actually reached out to us on Twitter this week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but so they're getting into the obscure and the surprising. And this week, it's not obscure, but it's very surprising. It's a country that the U.S. doesn't exactly have the best relationship with, but I know a bunch of wonderful people from there. So
North Korea?
I knew you were going to guess that.
Is it the Rocket Man? It's the Rocket Man.
It's not the Rocket Man. He has a VPN so that when he listens, it looks like he's tuning in from London.
Oh, okay.
But welcome to Country 98, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I had to look up to make sure I didn't call it Iran. Country number 98. And
very cool.
We promised to do our podcast. Well, we promised that Andy would do the podcast live at his expense from wherever the 100th country is. So I'm still banking on Madagascar being the 100th, but we should hopefully know that in the next couple weeks.
If it's the Maldives, have me on, please.
Maldives. So one quick note on a personal level. Last weekend was our company's annual fundraiser. I've mentioned on the pod a few times to raise money to fight leukemia and lymphoma. I had a website set up, Gooners versus Cancer, Gooners vs Cancer, and I'm proud to say, as our office raised over $40,000 for the cause in a time frame where a lot of people, and rightfully so, were putting their money towards hurricane relief in various areas of the country that really needed it. And I just wanted to send a special shout out to some of our listeners who know us because of the pod and still found it worthwhile to donate. Appreciate it. Ian O'Regan from San Antonio, guy I've met, great guy. Mike Hernandez, of course, USA Gooner 1886 from Northern Cali. Jay Riddle from Atlanta. Andy, thank you for your help. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And of course, a very generous donation from the piece of ass himself, Joey Murphy. So thank you for that. And we'll be back late Sunday this week to review Bate Borislav. Our friend Tom calls it Borislav, apparently. And then Brighton with a couple more first-time guests. We have, in case you haven't seen on our Twitter timeline, the most ridiculous memes or photoshops that you've ever. And the latest one is me naked in Ron Jeremy's body coming in like a wrecking ball, like Miley Cyrus, which is as disturbing as it sounds like. But we have the author of these incredible photoshops, Sebastian from the master of memes from New York, who will be joining us next week, along with Fredo from New Orleans to talk about Gooner Gross. So everyone, please tune into that pod, and And make sure that you reserve January 25th to 28th for Gooner Gras, because it is the best time you will have regarding Arsenal. So, Elliot, thank you for joining us. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Actually, a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Love the pod. So, I look forward to doing it again in the future, I hope.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Tell us where on Twitter people can block you.
Yeah, block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner, and definitely give the Arsenal Vision post-match pod a listen. Not because of me, but Stilberto or Tim Stillman is excellent. Clive and Paul are as well. And, we do every match. So it's a chance for you to hear something that you can get outraged by, at least twice a week.
Great stuff. And please do have a listen to that. Remember to listen to us. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, Stitcher. If Andy gets around to uploading it to SoundCloud on any given week, then you can listen to it on SoundCloud. And please leave us a review and a rating on iTunes. And that's it for the week, gents. Have a good week.
Thanks a lot, Elliot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Elliot. And come on, you Gooners.